but I'll ask it anyway. You mentioned something about him being a social realist in his early years. Was he part of the Ashcan group? Did they accept him as part of that?
I don't think he was a social realist.
No, but
He didn't fit tightly in any kind of.
Okay, but you said that people
As a
did
matter of
consider
fact,
him.
this reminds me, Ed Reinhardt did these genealogies of modern art. It was the first one in the 40s. Anyway, the last one was in the 60s. And there were these trees, and on the branches were the names of all the artists. And at one point, he had this thing where the figurative, he thought figurative art was just a problem. And totally corporatized and commercial and, you know, part of the evil empire. And so he would have the tree with Bentley and by the names, and then he would have the abstract side where he thought the future and the light and all the excitement and outer space and everything interesting and fabulous was happening. And Lewis was one of those.
I don't think of these as social realism. These were the things that are put in
Was
that
it why did they box him into that idea of
because
social
people
realism?
need boxes.
Two names, Lamont Greenberg and Harold Rosenberg. We were just talking about that. Thank God they're dead.
What's going on? You don't have to be labeled.
Some people need boxes. They don't know what to do with them. I mean, this was a hard show to sell because he didn't fit in a box.
No corporate.
It took a long time. We did not get corporate sponsorship. Other museums didn't want to take it. It was
And what
a
I'm
hard
fascinated by
sell.
abstract
No
art is
boxes.
powerful and
It's
strong
amazing.
if you're white, but if you're black, it's just I don't understand.
What did you say at the beginning?
If you're white, it's powerful and strong. If you're black,
What, the boxes?
no, the abstract art.
Michelle, do you think that's true today?
Reverse me.
Michelle,
Although, as Sidney used to say, are the Bergens here? They used to say a little abstract art goes a long way, which I think is funny, you know, because people, you know, they think it's interchangeable, you know. But it's not right. It's not right.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know.
Hi, I'm Susan Kahn, and I'm
Hi,
also.
Susan. I
Hi,
didn't recognize you.
Well, I've cut my hair.
You gotta hold your book up.
Oh,
Because I've been reading it, and it's fascinating in relationship to all of this. Yes, yeah.
so I am curious about. It's a very kind of particular question, but it's something that's been on my mind that you, of all people, Ruth, might be able to answer, which is. When Bill Agee did the Painting and Sculpture Art of the 1930s exhibition at the Whitney in 1968, and it was a show of art of the 30s that was intended to be a revisionist history and to focus on the importance of abstraction in the 1930s, and he didn't include any African American artists, and the Studio Museum did Invisible Americans, in which Norman Lewis showed Woman with a Yellow Hat. Why do you think Norman Lewis wasn't included in the show at the Whitney? I mean, he would have fit perfectly into that revisionist interpretation of the importance of abstraction during that period.
He revisioned in stages. He hadn't gotten far in his thinking. And he wasn't looking. He probably didn't know that.
Okay, so it's as simple as that.
No, I don't think that's simple. I don't think that's
Tries to
simple.
look at who knew what. And one of the things I was just reading about is that James Porter was friends with Barr. I was just reading that part. Who was the first director of the Museum of Modern Art. James Porter being a black art guy. From what I gathered from reading, I think maybe Porter didn't really approve or like Norman.
A lot of
You
people
know, I mean,
didn't
there
like
was a
Norman.
split in that black art. I think of them as being the royalty. James Porter was the first major collector of my mother's work. He came to our house and bought one of her paintings. They renamed it from Bridesmaid to. Anyway, the point is, these are little small colored worlds. related to each other. And it was interesting to me that Porter, who was so powerful, didn't get Norman, although he
There are a
got so
lot
much
of
else.
exhibitions of African American abstraction that Norman is not in, and don't ask me to say what they are. But he's not in them. So,
And I would have thought Romy could open any door for him, but apparently not. Because he was so social. He was the man. These were the men. Yes?
I want to add
I
to
was
her
talking
conversation.
back.
Oh, I
No,
apologize.
go ahead, no, go ahead.
I just want to add to the conversation and maybe include Ms. Ringgold in that conversation. Weren't you picketing in the 60s and the 70s? I'm not sure if it was MoMA or
Yeah,
Whitney.
all over the place.
In terms of, so can you add to
Museum of
that?
Modern Art
Museum of Modern Art, because,
and the Whitney.
and can you tell your story and based on why? Because it lends itself to her.
I picketed the Museum of Modern Art because they were not showing any black artists there. And I had not started being a feminist at that time because I thought that the art world was so racist that I needed to try to deal with that utter racism that keeping the black people out of everything. And so after we picketed there, and who got a show? Romy Bearden.
That's her last chapter, Susan's last chapter, I'm reading now.
Okay,
Romy
Romy
Bearden.
Bearden and Richard Hunt.
I'll never
Romy
forget.
Bearden and Richard Hunt got a show.
In
And
1968
there
or
were
9?
hardly any guys.
72.
Excuse me.
Oh, I mean, it was just like,
Excuse me.
I was crestfallen.
Excuse me. There were hardly any guys on that picket line. It was all women. And I said, what are you doing, you idiot? You're out here opening the door for the men to go in, and you're still outside. They didn't even invite me to come in and sit around the table and discuss it.
And they were
I'm
all
talking about,
discussing.
the curators there.
They were all wheeling and dealing.
But, and didn't invite me to the opening for Sam and, what's his name?
Richard Hunt.
For Richard Hunt and, what's his name?
Romy Bearden.
Okay, Romy Bearden. I was not invited to the show. And it was because of me they got in there. And I said, Faith, you're not thinking clearly. Something is wrong here. I think you need to be opening the way for women. That's what you are. Because you're black, yes. But you ain't in this show coming out. You didn't even get invited to come and sit around the table and talk about it. So you're an idiot. You can't do this. So I went to the Whitney because the Whitney had a show in which there were no black people in it, period. And all women, about the 30s.
That's right. That's
So we picketed that for the women show. And got 2 women in,
yeah.
Betty Saar
And Barbara Chase Rico.
and Barbara Chase Rico.
Sculpture annual. The
We
sculpture
got
annual.
those 2 women in that museum for the first time. Now mind you, I still wasn't in. But that's okay, it's still women, right? And that's when I became a feminist. I figured it out. It was a hard thing to deal with, but, and now I'm in the Museum of Modern Art, right? Yeah, and a whole lot of other stuff. Yeah, but it's taken all these years. It's been very, very hard. But I feel good that I have opened the door for a lot of other people to get them